Welcome to another Pirkei Avot shir. We're on chapter 4, Mishna 9, and we'd like to dedicate this episode in memory of Levy ben Moshe Esther and Elisheva Yael bat Levy, and also in memory of Yisrael ben Binyamin Rivka. And now I'm going to hand you over to Michael.
Thank you, Ramshiach. So in this Mishnah, we're introduced to Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef being Rabbi Yosef ben Halafta from last Mishnah. So who was Rabbi Yishmael? He was a Tana of the second half of the 2nd century CE. He had so vast a knowledge of sacred scripture that he declared himself able to write it in its entirety from memory. Much of scripture he would teach and explain to Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who once praised him for his great humility. Together with Rabbi Eliezer ben Shimon, he originally served as an official for the Roman government in the land of Israel, both being quite stout and burly. They were policemen of sorts who would apprehend thieves and bandits until it is told Elijah appeared to them and advised them to desist and let the Romans do their own dirty work. With his letter-perfect, thorough knowledge of Scripture, he seems to have debated fearlessly and triumphantly with early Jewish sects. So, what does this Mishnah say? Rabbi Shmuel beno Omer. Rabbi Shmuel, his son, said, "Hachoshech atzmo min hadin." He who avoids involvement with the law, porek memenu ever gozel shvuat shva, rids himself of enmity, robbery, and invalid oath-taking. V'hagas libo b'hora'ah soter rasha v'gas ruach. And while he who takes pride in laying down the law is foolish, wicked, and arrogant of spirit. So, let's give Rav Chaim of Volodin's commentary on this Mishnah. One who withdraws himself from judgment. He says, one who has a legal claim against his fellow but does not pursue the matter will avoid hatred, theft, and false oaths. One who is overly confident in ruling is a fool, for he is mindless of the potential theft and false oaths that might result. He is arrogant, for he obviously feels that he cannot come to any harm. And what does Rambam say on this? He says he is nonchalant in legal decisions to force his decisions without awe and fear. So basically they agree on these concepts. It can be, this Mishnah can be looked on in two ways. It's either as someone who is going to court, or it can refer to a judge. So, first basic concepts that we glean from this is that Jews should shun any litigation, as this could lead to, number one, if it's in a court of law and in a kind of domestic, not a Jewish court of law, it could turn into a chilul Hashem. And obviously, if you take someone to court, you are guaranteeing yourself enmity between the two parties. This is, you've got to consider, if someone takes someone to court, irregardless of who is guilty or not guilty, both sides, until the case is closed and a decision reached, both sides, the community will look and say, look, if they're going to court, someone must be guilty, and if it drags out, you'll say, well, look, neither of them can be that good if this is taking a long time to decide, because obviously there's reasons for it being extended, and we know that unfortunately lawyers tend to drag cases out as long as they can. Mm-hmm. So the longer a case drags on, the more you kind of judge the people participating. Litigants. Also, if you are involved in a court case, you perhaps will be advised by your lawyer to jump through loopholes. Perhaps they are there within the law, but technically, if you get away with a case that should not be decided in your favor, you are stealing money from the other person, according to God. according to God's eyes, you may jump through loopholes, but you're not reaching the correct outcome that Hashem would will, even if you are going to be monetary at a disadvantage. Also, if you give false testimony or you get involved in false oaths, this is terrible. A community needs goodwill in order to survive. And a settlement, when you take a case to court, you've really reached the limit of your kind of your arrangement with the other party. You've said everything else has failed. Let's go to court either which way, good or bad. Someone's going to suffer, someone's going to win. So you need goodwill. You have to find a settlement. It's interesting. But if you look at, settlement is always the preferred outcome. It's like when two countries go to war. They're all ready. They're all at the front lines with their tanks and their guns, and soldiers are lining up to be involved in a bloody war. If the best outcome would be Hashem would take the generals from both sides, take the generals and place them on the front line, what would happen? I guarantee that the generals would say, stop the war, let's sit around a negotiating table. That would be the outcome, which is a peaceful outcome that both parties are relatively satisfied, but there's not a bloody outcome where one beats the other senseless. So there's another way of looking at it, is if you are a judge. Now, if you're a judge in these sort of if you involve yourself with the law, you also, as a judge, you are going to be hated by either party. Number one, you've got the personal responsibility of not being swayed by subjective factors or any sort of biases. If you are swayed in any way, you are considered yourself a robber because you have committed the theft to have been taken place under your jurisdiction. If you make a decision either which way, one side is going to give you, you're going to be hated by one side. Or simply, if you did judge fairly, one side may be a bad loser and create a tremendous amount of enmity. The second half of this Mishna talks about a gas libo, which is actually an enlarged heart. A judge with an enlarged heart is someone who perhaps is driven slightly by emotions, and when you deal in any way by emotions in terms of law or in any other case, you perhaps come to the wrong decision. You're not thinking clearly. Sometimes you see, I know it's maybe not a good comparison, but something just sprung to mind. You see referees at soccer matches. They want to be the center of attention, so they create situations so that the match stops and they're the center of attention. The TV cameras are on them. You see that. In fact, sometimes you can look at the best referees or the best judges are the ones that let the game flow freely. That's quite an important point. So there is an element of arrogance and pride in a judge who thinks he is a King Solomon, and he is perhaps not the judge that he thinks that he is. And there's interesting also another thing where we should know our limitations. That we are not all judges. Sometimes we think we are, worthy of adjudicating in certain situations. I'll bring a story from the Netziv. The Netziv was Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin of Lodgin, who was a 19th century scholar. And he told a story. There was a story about a woman who came to him with a chicken to ask him to examine it, since she was uncertain if the chicken was kosher. The Netziv examined the chicken and declared it kosher. The woman was very happy, and she said, "My husband will be very happy to hear that. He also thought it was kosher." So she left, and the Netziv had a second thought about this and sent someone to bring her back with the chicken. He'd look at it and he said, "You know what? I'm sorry, but I made a mistake. This chicken isn't kosher. I was wrong the first time. You cannot eat it." The woman was a bit disappointed. She left, and his students were a little bit surprised by this decision. He's originally said it was kosher. Now he's going back on it and saying no, it's not kosher. The Netziv replied, "Don't fear. The first decision was correct. That chicken is fit to eat. But had I not called her back, this woman would have gone home convinced of her husband's fine ability to answer such questions of Jewish law. After all, he too said the chicken was kosher. The next time she would be in doubt in a matter of Jewish law, she would let him decide her questions. She would feel no need to consult a proper rabbinic authority. That would be far worse than losing a chicken that is really kosher. So that's why I reversed my decision." So I think that will basically conclude this Mishnah.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. That's a very interesting episode. And with that, we're going to look forward to the next time we convene, when we're going to do Mishnah 10. And that's also, I believe, from Rabbi Shmuel. So, until we meet again, we both wish you a wonderful and blessed week.